An identity is one of the most primordial elements that an artist can obtain. It can become more than just who they are. Their personality can transform into a character, and thus, an act of art in itself. It can add power to their performance and to their art form. This is not to say that they are pretending to be someone else, but rather that who they are is so unique that it can become larger than life to the eyes of the public, enhancing their body of work into another realm, adding substance and intrigue to their creations. If one were to look at wrestling as an art form, the identity or the character of a wrestler represents absolutely everything. Because even if what they do inside the ring is extraordinary, this may not be enough if their character is not compelling, or even worse, if it's considered lame or even boring. The opposite might also be true. If a wrestler character is immensely beloved and charismatic, their abilities inside the ring, if they are limited, lack substance, or if they are just plain bad, can be overlooked, given their charisma and the way in which they present themselves to the fans. Inside the crazy world of pro wrestling, wrestlers deal with a constant struggle, a perpetual quest to achieve the thing that may be considered the most important thing that a wrestler can do, and that thing is to get over. Because getting over in the media, and especially to the fans, represents improving your career at every single level, getting more feature, getting a better pay, and most importantly to some, it can give you an opportunity to get your name inside the history books of wrestling. For this reason, wrestlers have historically always been immensely jealous of the many elements that compose their gimmicks or characters, from moves, gear, entrance, poses, or even music. This is to such an extent that if another wrestler applies the same move as another member of the roster, there can be heat among said wrestlers, to the point of escalating into a full-blown fight. Despite the protective nature of the wrestlers with the elements that they identify as their own, whenever a gimmick or a concept gets hot with audiences, it can often be replicated, especially by wrestlers who have grown frustrated of not connecting with the audience, despite dedicating their entire lives to get good inside the ring. This desperation can lead to seeing an opportunity in copying another popular gimmick, with the intent of getting over with the fans. This to the point of straight up taking the name of another character and presenting this character as their own, from inspirations or renditions of legendary characters to stolen gimmicks, copycats, or even blatantly ripping off ideas. Wrestling has seen many variations of this happening throughout its history. The WWE have some of the most glaring examples of stolen or copied gimmicks, with one of these happening in the year 2012, when an ex-member of a group called Nexus, a stable that failed to launch the careers of the new stars of the WWE, debuted with the name of Ryback, being presented as a big-sized powerhouse, having a streak of victories and initially having only squash matches. His overall presentation led fans to draw comparisons between him and Goldberg, claiming that Ryback was just a revamp of the already existing Goldberg gimmick, going as far as to chant Goldberg during his matches. Despite the controversial nature of his character, he would go on to be involved with many main event talents, as it was the infamous rivalry that he had with CM Punk, being a series of botches during this feud, one of the many reasons for CM Punk to quit wrestling, and the WWE as a whole for a number of years. Still, Ryback will manage to become somewhat of a fan favorite, holding different titles, having good matches against top guys, and also performing amazing feats of strength during his WWE stint. All of these factors will help to make the Goldberg comparisons to die down until eventually will become forgotten, since he will evolve this gimmick into something of his own. Something similar happened with the Big Show, who was another big-sized wrestler who initially was presented as the son of Andre the Giant, being known with the name of The Giant. But despite utilizing a similar attire and being of a similar height, from the start the Giant would shock audiences with his impressive athleticism, with moves that very few big-sized wrestlers have ever dared to attempt. The Big Show will eventually become into something else, winning the World Heavyweight title and even becoming a member of the NWO. At WWE, he became one of the most beloved wrestlers from his era, shaping his gimmick into something unique, and despite criticisms, he constantly managed to adapt to the different eras that he was a part of. These two examples, although at some point were compared with other popular gimmicks, will eventually evolve into their own unique characters, crafting a persona that will reflect aspects of both their journeys and of their personalities. More flagrant examples of truly stolen gimmicks can be found in wrestling though, as it had been the infamous cases of wrestlers like the fake Diesel and the fake Razor Ramon, who were the characters of departed WWE stars Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. Mordecai was also a wrestler based on another gimmick, this being The Undertaker. He was meant to be an inverted version of the Phenom, even donning white gear instead of the iconic black one. The WCW, however, was plagued with this kind of practices, as it was the case of the Renegade, who was a WCW copy of the Ultimate Warrior. China would also had his WCW version in a female wrestler named Asia, and a rather much bizarre instance of this happening was the one of the fake Sting, who was a wrestler used in an angle that made the fans believe that Sting was siding with the NWO. Jeff Farmer, who was the real name of the fake Sting, would portray this gimmick on a number of occasions, taking part in the NWO versus WCW storyline. In a shocking turn of events, this imposter Sting would manage to get hugely over in Japan, since the WCW had a business partnership with the company of the Red Lion, and since the original Sting wasn't always available to perform at Japan, the fake Sting will often get booked at Japanese events, getting immensely over with the fans, teaming up with legendary wrestlers, and becoming a memorable part of the Japanese programming during this time. Now, if one were to discuss the topic of stolen or copied gimmicks, there's no better place than the world of Mexican wrestling to do so, given that some of the most convoluted, bizarre, and complicated instances of these have occurred there. First and foremost, it is important to establish the reasons why this has become somewhat of a common practice amongst the Lucha Libre landscape. In Mexican wrestling, there are several instances that led to a character getting duplicated, stolen, or even mass-produced, depending on factors like popularity, demand, or even legal disputes involving the rights of said characters. First off, there are the juniors. In Mexico, whenever a wrestler turns into an iconic figure, once he or she manages to gain the audience's favor and establishes his or her name amidst the minds of the wrestling fans, this character earns a value that goes beyond the monetary. In this case, getting over means more than just hearing your name being chanted by the people. It also means that you have acquired prestige. In the lore of Mexican wrestling, the term junior, when referring to a wrestler, occurs when a legendary wrestler who has earned prestige has a son, a trainee, or a relative who is also a wrestler. This rookie wrestler oftentimes adopts the name of this mentor figure in order to pay tribute to his elder, but also to continue with the legacy of the name and character. In some cases, the rookie wrestler is not necessarily the son of the legendary name that they adopt. He or she can also be a relative or a student of the store. The veteran wrestler is the one who chooses if this apprentice is worthy of the name or not, and if the iconic wrestler allows the rookie to use the name, this means that the young wrestler has received the blessing from the legend. The wrestler uses the same name with the only difference of adding junior at the end of it. Or, the wrestler could also use the term El Hijo de, which translates to the son of. This to differentiate between the two characters. Some of the most popular instances of this, and the ones who manage to create a legacy of their own, despite living with the pressure or working under the shadow of their legendary fathers, are the cases of El Hijo del Santo, who is the son of the legendary Santo, arguably the biggest name for Mexican wrestling, and Blue Demon Jr., the son of Blue Demon, who also has a strong argument to be named as the biggest luchador ever. These being two primordial examples of successful juniors, as they both are now considered as legends in their own right. Rey Mysterio is another interesting case, as he will initially be known as Rey Mysterio Jr., with the distinction that it was his uncle and not his father, the original Rey Mysterio, giving his blessing to his nephew by giving him his name. This will not be the last Rey Mysterio to appear though, as more wrestlers will also latch onto this gimmick, as in the 90s another wrestler appeared with the name of Rey Mysterio II, or Rey Mysterio II. He later on will change his name to Misterioso. the actual son of the OG Rey Mysterio, will begin his career in the year 2006, years after Rey Mysterio Jr. had already become a worldwide megastar. He will be initially known as El Hijo de Rey Mysterio, but later on he will change his name to Rey Mysterio El Heredero, or the heir, currently wrestling under this name. He wouldn't be able to use the junior moniker, given that it has already been taken by his cousin. Another two wrestlers will also adopt his name, with the difference that these two will be students and not actual sons of Rey Mysterio. The wrestlers will be El Hijo de Rey Mysterio II, who will also change his name to Rey Horus, and El Hijo de Rey Mysterio III, who changed his name to Deluxe. In more recent times, a new wrestler has emerged with the redundant name of King Rey Mysterio. That also comes with the blessing of the OG Rey Mysterio to use this ingrained name. This means that a total of 7 wrestlers at one point in their career share the name of Rey Mysterio, with only minor differences to distinguish them from one another. This without mentioning the many different quote-unquote Mysterios that exist in small territories in different towns in Mexico that copy this gimmick without the permission of the official Mysterio. The fact that so many wrestlers will use this mask and name prompted fans to begin to call to this situation as the Rey Mysterio multiverse. This gimmick will not be the only one that will be given the multiverse nickname from the fans though, as many more gimmicks will see a similar complicated history with many different wrestlers portraying a similar variant of the same character. Another popular multiverse in Lucha Libre is the one of the wrestler Mystico, who was done with the nickname of the last big boom in Mexican wrestling, given that his popularity was seen as equal or the closest thing since the days of the great ones like El Santo and Blue Demon, being truly one, if not the last, true Lucha Libre idol inside the country of Mexico. The Mysticos case takes us into another instance that led to the creation of clones, and this is the one when the company owns the rights of a character. This is pretty much self-explanatory, and it happens after a popular character leaves a company. If the company owns the trademark of the mask and character, they will give this gimmick to another wrestler in the roster, forbidding the departed wrestler from utilizing this name anywhere else. This has become somewhat of a common practice in recent times, and it is what happened to the wrestler Mystico after his departure from the CMLL. Mystico's popularity during the mid-2000s was something that hasn't been seen since the golden days of Lucha Libre, selling out many different arenas and being a national sensation all across the country, appearing at TV shows, commercials, and even music videos. He was as beloved as he was talented, representing to the eyes of the fans the present and the future of Lucha Libre. After many years ruling in Mexico as the top draw, in the year 2011, Mystico's popularity will earn him the opportunity to get into the WWE. Unfortunately, he will begin his run there with another mask and another gimmick, portraying the now infamous character of Sin Cara. This because the rights of the name and mask of Mystico was owned by the CMLL, and this is when the first so-called clone of Mystico will emerge. The CMLL could not afford to lose such an important character, and for this reason, they will begin to look for a new younger wrestler to portray the Mystico gimmick. A new rising star named Dragon Lee will be chosen, prompting him to leave the Dragon Lee character to his younger brother, who now wrestles for the WWE. This new Mystico will be presented as Mystico the New Era, although in the beginning he will be heavily criticized by the fans for his much more leaner physique and because people were aware that this was a completely different wrestler, calling him a fake and a copy of the original one. Still, this new Mystico will manage to obtain some level of success, although not getting even slightly close to the level of the original one. In the year 2014, the OG Mystico will return back into Mexico after having a disappointing and heartbreaking run in the WWE. Once he arrived, he will learn that there was already a new Mystico in CMLL, meaning that he will have to wrestle with a new name. he will choose to wrestle for the competition AAA and will create a new character to wrestle there, one with the name of Mysticis. According to him, this name was a combination of both the Mystico and the Sin Cara name, combining also the design of these two masks. Mysticis will only last a single year with this character, as he will return once again to the CMLL, the place where he became a megastar. Once there, he still couldn't use the Mystico character, as the new Mystico was still around, so he will once again change his gimmick, now being known as Caristico. Caristico will be met with an enormous support from the audience, making the new Mystico to face some backlash, since the fans never truly supported him. Caristico and Mystico will wrestle together as a team, even managing to earn the tag team CMLL titles, and eventually will even begin a feud against one another, teasing a Mask vs Mask match until in the year 2021, and after over 11 years with the mask, the new Mystico will leave the CMLL. Frustrated with the handling of his character, he will go to Ring of Honor and will join his brother Rush and Dragon Lee, now with a new character name, Dralistico, combining both the name of Dragon Lee and Mystico, also with a very similar mask to the one of Mystico. Dralistico is currently a member of AEW, looking to have a bigger spotlight there. Now, without the new Mystico, Caristico will once again reclaim the Mystico mask in character, with a triumphant return as once again the face of the CMLL. But this will not be the end of the many different variants of his characters. Back in the year 2018, years after the OG Mystico had already been gone to the CMLL, the AAA announced a new character on the roster, one with the name of Mysticis Jr. This new wrestler was not the son of the OG Mystico. Since the AAA had the rights of this character, they saw an opportunity in this and presented a young rookie wrestler as the new Mysticis, in order to capitalize on some of the popularity that the original had, creating yet another clone of the OG Mystico within the realm of Lucha Libre. The most bizarre case, however, came even before Mystico will begin his historic initial run in the CMLL. Back in the early 2000s, during the initial years of Mystico, after seeing the rapid and immense popularity that this new wrestler was getting, another wrestler got in contact with the CMLL, letting them know that his in-ring name was also Mystico, and that he had already been wrestling under this name for several years prior to this new Mystico, claiming that he was the rightful owner of this name. The CMLL, despite knowing this, still went on and acquired the trademark rights for this name and character, forcing this other original Mystico to change his name. He will initially be known as Mystico from Juarez, but eventually he will change it entirely into Incognito, leaving behind the name that he initially owned. Incognito will continue to wrestle on the independent scene in Mexico, managing to also obtain some major exposure by wrestling at the indie company Chikara Pro Wrestling.
How you doing, people? This is Incognito, the original Mystico from El Paso. I'm here.
He will slowly begin to get known around the USA scene, and this will lead him to find a place as a member of the FCW roster, wrestling there as the wrestler Uniko. Uniko will manage to get into the NXT, and subsequently into the main roster, initially wrestling without his mask, alongside another wrestler named Camacho, with a Cholo gimmick. Meanwhile, CMLL's Mystico will also arrive at WWE, now as Sin Cara. Sin Cara initially will receive an immense push in order to turn him into the biggest Latin American star there, and it was during a WWE tour in Mexico that Sin Cara will begin a rivalry against a clone evil version of Sin Cara with a black mask and gear. This evil Sin Cara was being portrayed by none other than Uniko, the same man that was, in theory, the original Mystico. These two will have a short-lived feud, one where the original Sin Cara will mask the evil one, ending the brief run of this evil character. In a shocking turn of events, the original Sin Cara, after having a series of bad matches and many botches, will get sacked by the WWE. But this will not be the end of this character, since the WWE still saw value in the Sin Cara gimmick, and thus they will give this character to Uniko, who will wrestle as Sin Cara both in NXT and on the main roster, replacing the original Sin Cara without many of the fans noticing this. Uniko will be the one who will wrestle as a part of the popular tag team Lucha Dragons, alongside Kalisto, managing to earn the NXT tag team titles, as well as being an integral member of the great tag team division of the WWE during these years. Eventually, this Sin Cara will also leave the WWE, seemingly putting an end to this character. Uniko still wrestles in Mexico, now doing it with the name of Cinta de Oro, a character that also has had a complicated dispute over the years. The existence of clones for Mysticos, many different characters, the different names that he managed to get over despite the constant change of gimmicks, and the convoluted nature of the many characters that now exist thanks to him can only be seen as a testament of the level of stardom that Mystico had always possessed, with him now finally getting the praise and respect that he always deserved, especially with his recent appearances at AEW shows. Another instance, and probably the most popular one of clones occurring due to a company owning the rights of a character, is the one of La Parca. The first Parca is a wrestler whose real name is Adolfo Tapia. In Lucha Libre, the real identity of the luchadors is almost always a secret. This is done to hide the identity of the wrestler and to preserve the tradition of the mask. Adolfo Tapia, despite never losing the Parca mask, will publicly come out and reveal his name to the audience, in order to prove that he was the original Parca. The problem began back in 1996. After some time wrestling in AAA, Tapia will see the opportunity to go to the USA, and he will wrestle for the company WCW, becoming one of the most beloved and iconic cruiserweights from that time. Meanwhile, back in AAA, as they own the rights of this character inside of Mexico, they will give the La Parca character to another wrestler, one named Jesus Escobosa, or simply known as Chuy. This was done without most of the audience knowing this at the time, and it was only after the original Parca returned once again to Mexico that fans noticed that now there were two Parcas, one working in AAA and the other one wrestling for independent promotions, and eventually in the CMLL. Since AAA had registered the rights of the character, a legal dispute will begin. Tapia will claim that he had created the character, and it was him who portrayed it for many years, and so he felt that he had the rights to claim this character as his own. Meanwhile, the AAA had been the ones to register and own the legal rights of the gimmick. This dispute would last until 2003, when Tapia will eventually lose this legal battle, forcing him to leave the character and changing his name into LA Park. Besides these two Parcas, another one will arrive in the year 1997, and his name was Super Parca, a wrestler that will wear a similar gear to La Parca, with the only difference that he will add an S symbol to his mask and suit, one that was similar to the one of Superman. Under the mask was Remo Banda, a legendary wrestler that already had portrayed a different popular character, Volador. He was a relative of Tapia, and it will be him who will give his permission to create this character. He will wrestle almost exclusively on the independent scene in Mexico, until the year 2003, when he will lose this mask to the son of El Santo. On that same year, 2003, another new Parca will emerge, with the name of Parca Guerrera, or the Warrior Parca. This was a Japanese version of the character, with the wrestler Kazushige Nozawa as the wrestler behind this mask. He will be in a tag team alongside LA Park, and he will only use this character on this one occasion, during a tag team tournament for the company All Japan Pro Wrestling. In AAA, on the year 2013, another Parca will appear, with the name of La Parca Negra, meant to be an evil version of La Parca. He will don a full-body black suit and will also have a heel personality. During the course of this character, a total of 40 different wrestlers will portray the same gimmick. This without explicitly stating this, as this character will be presented as if it was the same one every single time. Other examples of wrestlers taking inspiration from this particular character were the wrestlers Muerte Cibernética, who will wear a half Parca and half Cibernetico mask. This given that those two were feuding, and because he had arrived as a monster heel whose sole purpose was to defeat La Parca. The other one will be the wrestler called La Calaca, who was a wrestler that also was supposed to be an evil version of La Parca, having the same suit but with the colors inverted, as well as using a skull mask with horns. This wrestler was supposed to have a feud with La Parca, but this will never occur, and he will eventually lose his mask in the year 1997. Amongst all of these cases, there were still 4 other wrestlers that will also join into the Parca's lore, 3 of which were the sons of the most famous ones. First, there were the kids of LA Park, who will both enter into the world of wrestling, continuing with his father's legacy. Hijo de LA Park will begin to wrestle in the year 2010, and LA Park Jr. will do so in the year 2019. Those two, alongside his father, will form formed the faction of La Familia Real. The word Real was in reference to the fact that they were the family of the original Porca, given that Tapia has always called himself as the real Porca. The Familia Real will have a notorious and successful run in the company MLW, where LA Park will become one of the most beloved and novel wrestlers there, even managing to earn the World Tag Team titles alongside his son, Hijo de LA Park. The three of them, for over a year, will become emblematic members of this roster, until an incident where the three Parkas will apply reckless chair shots to both Jacob Fatu and Alex Hammerstein. This incident will lead the three Porcas to be fired, ending their run in the USA and returning once again to Mexico. Also, in the year 2018, the son of the second Porca, the Triple Ace one, will begin to wrestle, and he will be presented by his father as La Porca Jr., although he won't begin to wrestle full-time until the year 2020. And following the tragic passing of his father, he claimed that he will not use the name of La Porca Jr. Instead, he will be known as Caris La Momia Jr., being that this was also a character that his father used prior to becoming La Porca. At last, one final wrestler will join the mix. In the year 2025, the AAA will announce the arrival of a new Porca. Many fans began to speculate if this will be a one-time only deal, or if this was a new version of the iconic character. After the latter became true, fans now began to theorize about who was this new wrestler, with many fans believing that it was the son of the second Porca, something that was proved to be wrong. Eventually, it was known unofficially that the man behind this new Porca mask was the wrestler formerly known as Brazo de Oro Jr., one of the most promising young stars from the roster. This new Porca has been mostly well received by the fans, and especially has been an integral part of the many WWE and AAA cards that had been taking place during his first year. Out of all of the chaotic and convoluted history of this character, the most affected wrestler by this has always been LA Park, the original Porca, given that after his initial departure and subsequent return to Mexico, many fans believed for many years that he was just a copy of the AAA Porca, since he had to change his name and mask, and for many years, Tapia would live in frustration, trying to let the audiences know that he was the original one. On top of having to endure the misconception about his character, he will also have to go through a legal dispute against the company that owned the rights of what was his character, a dispute that eventually he will lose. This misconception is something that many fans, especially those outside of Mexico, are still unaware of, with many fans believing that the Porca who tragically passed away in 2020 was the one who tore the ring up back in the WCW days. Despite all of this, LA Park slowly and patiently will become a fan favorite inside of all of the biggest promotions in Mexico, thanks to his ruthless attitude, his hard-hitting style, and his charismatic loud mouth. He managed to get recognition and now is being regarded as one of the greatest living legends from Mexico. At last, the final instance of clone characters inside of Lucha Libre is the one known as the rip-off gimmick. This is when wrestlers will create a character that is clearly inspired by another popular one. This is done without utilizing the actual name of the legend that they are copying, but with many similarities to the original one, both in the name and in the masks. This is done obviously without the blessing or authorization from the family or from the wrestler that they are ripping off. These last two cases are some of the most talked about and most controversial instances surrounding juniors and clone luchadors in contemporary times in Lucha Libre. These two cases also involve the two biggest names in Mexico, El Santo and Blue Demon. The legendary original Blue Demon had two biological kids, both of whom will choose not to follow him in his footsteps, as they both didn't enter into the world of wrestling. He will have another son, however, only that this child will be adopted. This adopted son will truly embrace the passion for wrestling that his father had, and he inevitably will become a wrestler, debuting with the name of Blue Demon Jr., despite not being the biological son of the legendary Blue Demon. Blue Demon will give his blessing to his son, allowing him to inherit the Blue Demon character. Although it has never been officially declared, for years fans speculated that there was some animosity between the biological children and the adopted one for this reason, and with time, the biological kids will allege that they were the rightful heirs to the Blue Demon name and character. This feud between these two parties increased after the death of the legendary Blue Demon. After the passing of the legend, Blue Demon Jr. was the owner of the trademark rights of his own name. The rights of the name and character of the original Blue Demon, however, was owned by the biological son of the legend. This son will begin to capitalize on this ownership by developing projects including a TV series about the life of his father. All of this without including Blue Demon Jr. And while he was still actively wrestling. In the year 2011, the biological son of Blue Demon was eager to continue to capitalize on his father's name and brand. And he will get to the point of approaching a young rookie wrestler with a proposition. This young wrestler at the time was a member of the CMLL, wrestling under the name of Metro. This was a wrestler that had an Olympic wrestling background and that knew very little about pro wrestling. The son of Blue Demon, who was not a wrestler himself, wanted Metro to wrestle under the name of Blue Demon, as this name's trademark was owned by him. This was something that obviously would cross a line with tradition and with the fans, since there was already a Blue Demon Jr., and because this rookie wrestler was not a member of the Blue Demon family, nor had any connections with the iconic wrestler. According to the wrestler Metro, the son of Blue Demon offered him 10% of the earnings. He offered another 10% to the CMLL to present this new character there, and he will take 80% of the deal himself. All of this by presenting a new wrestler with the name of Blue Demon. The legendary Mexican wrestling promoter and boss of CMLL at the time, Paco Alonso, will warn this rookie wrestler that if he were to take this deal and name, he will get enormous heat from the audience, since by this time, Blue Demon Jr. had already built a legacy of his own and had an already established fan base, and this could be a huge turning point in his career, and not precisely in a positive way. The rookie wrestler was tempted with the idea, given that he wished to earn notoriety and relevance since he was a complete unknown in the world of Lucha Libre, but ultimately he would politely decline the offer, telling the son of the legendary wrestler that he didn't want the hate of the audience by adopting this legendary name, especially since he wasn't a family member nor had anything to do with the original Blue Demon, and most importantly, he didn't want any trouble or rivalry with Blue Demon Jr., given that he was a pretty much beloved and respected wrestler that already had portrayed and represented valiantly his father's legacy for a number of years up to that point. And for a moment, everything seemed to be okay with this character, but suddenly, in a stunning twist, the CMLL will straight up steal this idea and will present a character of their own, utilizing the same rookie wrestler that had declined to take the name of Blue Demon. He will now begin to be presented with blue trunks and a blue and silver mask, a look that resembled a lot the one of Blue Demon. All of this with the name of Diamante Azul, which could be translated as Blue Diamond, a very similar name to the one of the iconic wrestler. The fan backlash after the debut of this supposedly new wrestler was felt immediately, as many fans will accuse the CMLL ripping off the character of Blue Demon. The CMLL will even award him the trophy of the Blue Legend Tournament, a tournament that they held annually to commemorate the life and career of Blue Demon. In the beginning, Blue Demon Jr. will allege that he didn't mind that the CMLL had produced a copy of his father's character, and that he had nothing against the young wrestler or against the company, although with time these two will be put in a rivalry by the fans. The same fans that would also claim that Diamante Azul was an incredible and talented young wrestler that should have been presented with another character, given that clone gimmicks are almost never successful. With time, the two wrestlers will eventually embrace this rivalry and will tease a match between the two, with rumors spreading for years that a mask versus mask match between the two will happen. But over time, these rumors will slowly begin to fade, and now with the apparent retirement of Blue Demon Jr. approaching, it is highly unlikely that this will ever happen. Diamante Azul will claim that in the beginning, the level of mediatic attention that he was getting, despite being mostly hate from the fans, were rewarding for him since he finally obtained some popularity. Although with time, he will slowly begin to lose momentum and began to grow tired of the route route that his career was taking. This for the way in which the CMLL often books its matches, since they notoriously do it in the old-fashioned way, presenting matches as one-off contests without a feud behind them, often featuring the same pairings for months on end with very little narrative or storyline behind them. Diamante was tired of this and begged the CMLL to put him in a rivalry against anybody. But the CMLL was happy enough to only have him as a mascot, presenting him as their own little version of Blue Demon, as if he was the original one. But the wrestler didn't saw this as enough, and he wanted to create a legacy on his own, by having good matches, great rivalries, and winning accolades of his own, instead of pretending that the accolades of the legend were his, something that the CMLL was doing. This was something that Diamante despised, and eventually would led him to ask for his release, something that the CMLL will eventually agree. After CMLL, Diamante will consider the possibility of retiring, since there were not many opportunities for him, especially not the ones where he will be given any kind of protagonism. He will go on to wrestle in the independent scene in Mexico until the year 2021, where he will arrive at AAA, now being known as DMT Azul, although everybody will refer to him as Diamante Azul. Diamante will finally develop a gimmick of his own, changing his attire, mask, and overall presentation, presenting impressive design for his many masks. In present times, he has managed to garner a fanbase of his own, and he currently wrestles as an independent wrestler. He and Blue Demon Jr. will continue to tease a mask vs mask match, and only time will tell if this will finally materialize before the legendary Blue Demon Jr. retires. On a final note, one last case of this happening is the one of a wrestler bizarrely known as Axel, the Silver Heir, the real-life grandson of El Santo, a wrestler that will have a constant and relentless feud against another member of his own family, the son of El Santo, the biggest obstacle that he ever faced. Sadly for Axel, this feud will not take place between the ropes. Instead, this will be a real-life legal and bitter battle between the two, one that will divide their family and even will manage to divide the audience and the public opinion. A battle that, to the eyes of many fans, will tarnish the career of both men involved. Axel is the grandson of El Santo, being the son of one of the Santo's sons that was not a wrestler. He will attempt to follow in the steps of his legendary grandfather, and throughout his career he will utilize a number of different names, beginning his career with the name of Goldman in the year 1993. Later on, in the year 2003, he will attempt to wrestle with the name of El Plateado, which meant the Silver One, being this a reference to El Santo, as one of his many nicknames was El Enmascarado de Plata, which translates to the Silver Masked Man, and it was with this name that the many troubles of his life will begin. Once he attempted to wrestle under this name, he knew that there could be some troubles with his uncle, the son of El Santo, who by that time was already an established wrestler and the owner of the trademark of both his name and the name and brand of his father, as well as he would register many different variations of his father's name in order to stop the creation of any copycat wrestlers in Mexico. According to Axel, he will approach his uncle to tell him that he was going to wrestle with a new character, one with the name of El Plateado. In Axel's own words, initially his uncle, the son of El Santo, will be okay with this, even showing a bit of support to his nephew by giving him his consent to wrestle under this name. El Plateado consequently will appear at a TV show, and while they were presenting him, the TV host will emphasize on the fact that he was the grandson of El Santo, being the first one of his grandsons to become a wrestler. According to Axel, this TV presentation caused a big deal of buzz within the wrestling community of Mexico, creating great anticipation for this new character, one that will carry on with the legacy of the legendary El Santo. According to him, this incident in the media will be the one thing that will trigger the animosity and anger of his uncle against him. In Axel's own words, after this TV appearance, his uncle will tell him that he will have to dedicate to something else. This as a way of telling him that he couldn't wrestle under this name. Axel claims that he took this as a threat from his uncle, and in his own words, the son of El Santo, will allegedly tell him that if he will go on and continue to wrestle with his name, Axel will have to inevitably face the consequences. As Axel claimed, in no more than 2 months after this initial threat, his uncle will sue him on multiple instances, beginning the hard and devastating many legal disputes that these two will have. The son of El Santo will sue him given the resemblance in the mask and for the name of his character, alleging that these were too similar to the characters of which he owned the rights of. The administration body of patents and trademarks of Mexico will side with the son of El Santo, given that he had already registered this brand, the one of his father, as well as many others, forbidding Axel to use the name of El Plateado. He would then attempt to wrestle with the name of the grandson of El Santo, as he was the real-life grandson of El Santo. But this was also something that he legally couldn't do, as the name of El Santo was already a trademark name. This legal dispute will last for over 10 years between these two family members, with Axel stating that even the Lucha Libre Commission, which is a real-life organization that regulates boxing, MMA and Lucha Libre in Mexico, will side with the son of El Santo, being this organization the one who would force him to wrestle with the name of Axel, given that this was the first name that he used when he began to wrestle. As time went on, Axel will attempt many different ways in which he could wrestle and let the fans know who his grandfather was, especially by utilizing a mask that had a huge resemblance to the one of El Santo. In the year 2013, he will even got the opportunity to wrestle for the AAA, being presented by none other than Blue Demon Jr. This was something that managed to piss off the son of El Santo, threatening to sue the AAA, and supposedly the son of El Santo will get so furious with Blue Demon Jr. that the two of them will never share the same ring ever again. Axel's time in AAA will be short, as he will not have many matches there, and will be completely irrelevant in the programming, lasting only a single year on this company. He will go on to wrestle for many independent and small-town promotions, claiming that his uncle was the one who was blocking him on many of the biggest Mexican promotions behind the scenes, especially on the most important ones, being this the reason for promoters to not call or book him, as nobody wanted to face legal troubles by hiring him. Axel also alluded to the fact that despite being uncle and nephew, the son of El Santo is only 8 years older than he is, being the youngest of 10 siblings. According to Axel, even as a kid, his uncle used to tell him that he was jealous of him, believing his own parents loved their grandson more than their own son. In his eyes, Axel arrived as a baby and instantly stole the spotlight from him. Yet, all of this is something that only Axel has ever stated. Beyond the curiously small age gap, no evidence has ever surfaced to prove this claim. Still, what Axel tries to infer here is that it might be this jealousy, the thing that incited the resentment that the son of El Santo has always had towards his nephew. Addressing the issue from the point of view of the son of El Santo, he has always claimed that he is the only one able to portray this character and mask, given that it was his father's final will, stating that it will only be his own son, the only other wrestler fitted enough to also wrestle under this mask. And this is the sole reason why he never gave his blessing to his nephew. Contrary to what Axel claims, the son of El Santo sees Axel's actions as a form of stealing from him and from the legacy of his father. The son of El Santo will also claim that his nephew Axel is a bad awful wrestler, being this one of the biggest reasons why he can wear this legendary mask, and allowing him to do so will only tarnish the prestige that El Santo's character have. In the present day, Axel still wrestles, doing it as Axel the Silver Heir, being this tagline the only thing that he could legally have in his name, in reference to who his grandfather was. Although this feud will be immensely mediatic in Mexico, his career will never take off and will have very few and sporadic matches throughout the years, matches that lack any kind of relevance. To this day, the audience opinion on him is heavily divisive, as many fans still see him as just another clone of El Santo, and as a wrestler that never had enough talent to create a legacy of his own, while others see him as a wrestler whose career was permanently damaged and hindered by his resentful uncle. Meanwhile, the son of El Santo will grow a reputation amongst fans, thanks to this legal dispute and many other instances where he will sue and take to court matters that involve his father's character. He will begin to be perceived as a wrestler that will constantly get into legal disputes against others who will get into his way. This will tarnish his overall image in more recent years, being seen as a bitter and thin-skinned individual, someone who has very little tolerance with matters surrounding the use of his father's legacy. This despite El Santo being an iconic and popular Mexican figure. This was clearly evident during his recent retirement tour, having many cards with very poor attendance, and even with fans booing him during one of his final matches. Ultimately, this dispute would prove to be detrimental for both men involved. Whether if this is more granted to one man than to the other is up for debate, and it's incidents like this that demonstrate why a character is so valuable to a wrestler and to wrestling as a whole. Managing to combine both the identity of a character while also connecting with the audience is one of the most complex things to do, being this such an intricate feat to achieve that many wrestlers will risk their entire careers, youth, and even the public image and perception with the fans in favor of getting their character and gimmick sorted. The stealing and copying of a gimmick is only the byproduct of the nature of the business, a business that has no place for mediocrity, one where the fans can end the career of a talented and gifted athlete if their character doesn't intrigue them regardless of their abilities inside the ring. This being especially true when discussing the Mexican wrestling fans, as these are fans that are immensely demanding, relentless, and at times unfair, since Lucha Libre is a huge part of their culture and of their identity. The bar that the stars from the past have set is incredibly high, witnessing the creation of legends, icons, and larger-than-life figures. This environment creates a great deal of competitiveness, which translates into an overall better product, but at the same time, it can lead to bitterness. And it is in this bitterness and frustration that many wrestlers decide to take a more questionable route when crafting their characters, stepping over trademarks and in Mexico, crossing the line of tradition, appropriating the legacy and sacrifice that another legend has already left behind. In hindsight, one could argue that the safest route to take, the one that has proved to have the better outcomes throughout history when trying to create a character, is nothing more than just being yourself. This is because people tend to connect better when someone is genuine, when there is some truth behind what is being said. Steve Austin wasn't a main eventer despite his technical prowess until he began to be himself, when he embodied the anger that he had for his many failures. There is a bit of Mark Calloway in The Undertaker, in the way that he commands respect for the business, and in the way in which he knows that he can impose his will on others. Because what is real is compelling, the fans can relate to the struggle, and it is only when the line that divides reality from kayfabe gets blurry, when the real-life struggles bleed into the story, that the connection with the fans occurs. Real-life moments, like a wrestler feeling as his good guy persona has grown stale and attempts to become an anti-hero. Something as real as the first indie darling that breaks through into the Fed and gets frustrated with the company's constant belittle of him, leading him to spew everything that angers him to an audience that avidly has felt the same way about the product that they are consuming. Moments that resonated with the audience and make them wonder if what they are seeing is a part of the show or if it's something else, something that was not supposed to happen. These are the things that sets apart these stars from the aspiring failures. All of these moments, characters, and actions have always resonated with audiences, and it's because they come from a place of realism, of truth. So a wrestler, when looking for a character, instead of looking outside for inspiration, they might want to try and look within themselves, because it is only themselves who know about their hardships, about the injustices that they have faced. It is only themselves who really know how does it feel to fail, and it is only when they realize that they're not alone in this god-awful feeling that their vindication truly begins.